Hey, what's up everybody? Robert, Rule of Two Review here, and today, even more crazy Nintendo news. But first, some house cleaning. Okay, so before I get into all this crazy cool Nintendo news, I have to say that the last week and a half or so have been really exciting for the channel. Not like I have a whole ton of subscribers yet for Rule of Two Review, but definitely in the last week or so, there's been a significant jump. For what I'm used to, I'm only at, between 40 and 50 subscribers right now, but I probably had 10 or so brand new subscribers in the last 7 days. And so I definitely have to say thank you guys so much. It feels really good to see people finally kind of starting to pick up on the channel, what it is that I'm doing, and the other people involved in the channel are doing slowly as we introduce all that stuff. And I've been getting a lot of positive feedback for the most part, so it's really cool. My first video passed 1,000 views last week, so that's a milestone that for me was a pretty big deal. So I was really stoked and thrilled about that. The channel's only about 3 months to the day old, believe it or not. I think today... Is it possible? The 30th? I think today might even be the 3-month anniversary. What a crazy coincidence. So anyway, it's only been a few months, but man, it feels good. So I just wanted to say thank you guys. The few of you out there who are subscribing and, following on a semi-regular basis and giving some good feedback and stuff, positive or negative, that's fine. Definitely thank you. It feels really great. I'm glad to have you guys supporting, and I hope that it keeps you invested and interested in gaming, the gaming industry, and wanting to just do whatever it is you do in the gaming space that entertains you and keeps you interested. So right on. You guys kick ass. Also, I wanted to give a quick shout out to one Mr. Chad. Mr. Chad is a brand new person to the Rule of Two Review channel. You might have seen over the last few days, he's been doing some Let's Plays for the Banner Saga, which is a tactics strategy RPG for the PC. And he's not only my best friend in real life, but he frequented and was a regular staple in the One Bit podcast we were doing on iTunes for a few years before we brought over to YouTube. And he's been on a few videos since we started on YouTube, but really for the most part haven't brought him in yet. So I'm going to be doing that a lot soon. He's a very smart, talented, funny as hell chap. So I definitely want to say I'm going to leave a link below to part 1. Check out his Let's Plays of the Banner Saga. He's brand new to this, but he freaking loves it. He's really funny, also really smart, knows his games, and also the Banner Saga is a really good game. So if anything, you should check it out for the sake of the game itself. But either way, I had to give my bro, Mr. Chad, some love because that guy kicks ass, his videos kick ass, and please go and check them out. Okay, so on to the good stuff. It's time for more Nintendo, which, as you know, that always gets me excited. As I always have to mention on these videos that they are my favorite gaming company, although I love everybody. Nintendo still is my number one and my go-to company. The news over the last few weeks has been all over the place, man. Some good, some bad. There's been a lot of stuff that you could definitely say or spin to be negative, the drop in stock prices, the financial losses, the cutting of the sales projections for early 2014, all that stuff. Very unfortunate for my favorite gaming company, who I think is ultimately still doing great and providing a really awesome gaming product to everybody. But yeah, so it's been all over the place. Their fiscal year is about to come to an end next month. That's March 31st is the last day of their fiscal year. And so Satoru Iwata, who is the president of Nintendo, recently addressed a financial analyst meeting where he was kind of talking about the company's futures, plural, the future of the company, its mistakes over the first year, everything it's looking at going forward, the renewed focus on this and that, how they're going to turn things around. You could almost consider it, from what I've read and researched, you could equate it to a State of the Union address, only by not the president of America, but the president of Nintendo about the state of Nintendo's union. So that's kind of a fun little political analogy there. And that's kind of what it was. And these things happen all the time. Every company does them. Nintendo, they're so public in how this stuff happens that it becomes a bigger deal. I think we talk about it more than even compared to its direct competition when Sony and Microsoft does it. For some reason, that stuff doesn't make the kind of headlines that it does when Nintendo does, which as a Nintendo fan, I love that because the more news and information I can get about my favorite company, the better. So there's a few pretty interesting key features to take away from what was spoken about. So I'm going to kind of touch on, 2 or 3 of them and kind of give my overall opinions and views and see what it is you guys think. Okay, so a lot of the information that I was able to find about this, I got from IGN. They have some great information pertaining to all of this stuff on the site, so I'm going to link their main article below, so you guys can go and research all the stuff that they were able to say and kind of bring about, the facts that they have available. But I'm going to kind of touch on my feelings about it in general. So one of the most important things that we really could take away from what was happening with Nintendo and Iwata's presentation is that Nintendo is still dedicated and focused on the the Wii U, and it's still the head. I don't know how he worded it. I can try to pull it up here. It's still basically the focus. Here, it's the center of Nintendo's strategy. That's the way he mentioned, which you of course would always assume a company's home console would be that. People weren't sure because Nintendo sees so much unparalleled success in the handheld market, and they have in the past in the console market too. They've basically created this industry we have today, but the Wii U had such a rough first 9 months that, it was kind of in question exactly what their center was. So here they are saying the Wii U is still what we're doing. We're dedicated to it. Despite the fact that, the very public information about the rough first year and, the change in sales projections and stuff for the early part of 2014, they're not shying away from it. They're not going to abandon it. Thank God. It's finally some good, hard confirmation about that, because people really were trying to talk about the fact that they'd have to get rid of the Wii U and move on to something else, or the stupid conversation about leaving the hardware market altogether, which I'm sorry, I don't mean to call anyone out, but I mean, honestly, that's a stupid concept. There's no reason they have any need to do that right now. And honestly, if that ever did happen, the video game industry would be all the worse for it. So I'm really glad that they've, I never doubted it, but here they are basically solidifying that that's not happening. They're dedicated to the Wii U. That's great. I think the Wii U is a fantastic system. I've dabbled in the other two systems as well. I don't own them yet, and probably next month I'm finally going to get the first of the two, PlayStation 4, Xbox One. But I don't really see a way where one of those systems is going to be my favorite next-gen system, at least right away. Right now, everything the Wii U makes available to us and the great games that just came out and the ones that we know are coming. I mean, I know that the Wii U is going to be getting most of my next-gen playtime for a while. It really is. And that's okay. It had a year start anyway, so that's the way it should be. They squandered most of that first year, but they still had amazing games come out before the other systems did. Of course, Super Mario 3D World, Pikmin 3, Wonderful 101, Zombie U, Monster Hunter 3. I mean, and there's Sonic, and there's a few other games. I mean, they had great games, and I'm so excited for what's coming just around the corner, starting with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze next month. So it's going to be my go-to system probably for a while, I think the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 I know they're going to be great. They're great pieces of hardware as is. And I know that their software library is going to fill up and be really awesome. I fully will support those systems. I got nothing against them. But because they are only just now in their first year, there's nothing compelling for those systems now. And immediately, only Titanfall is very exciting. And I know I could play that on my PC, but for some reason, I just want to play that on the Xbox One. So Titanfall is interesting. Infamous looks pretty good. But other than that, there's nothing we know about right now. It's still looking like a barren first year until next holiday for those systems. So anyway, I'm beating a dead horse. The Wii U is going to be my go-to. So it's nice to hear Nintendo say this is still what we're focusing on. Something else that Iwata addressed when talking about this specific subject is that the game they need to focus on. He acknowledged this. We need to focus on the gamepad more. And I freaking totally agree, man. Thank God. I so wanted to hear somebody from Nintendo say that. That gamepad, for me personally, in my opinion, is badass. That thing is so cool. It's probably my favorite controller ever. And when you really dissect the scenario and look at it, I mean, how could it not be most people's favorite controller ever? It is the same style, the same basic feel and premise of an Xbox 360 controller or the PlayStation DualShock, some of the controllers that a lot of people laud as the best controllers available. And the Wii U is that, only it's got a freaking touchscreen and a gyroscope and cameras built into it, and it's so comfortable. That could have turned into a mess. Let me just admit that right now. It could have been an uncomfortable disaster, and then it would have just been the worst thing ever. However, it's very comfortable, it's light, it works pristinely, and it does so much, and it really helps add to the gaming experience when a developer uses it properly. That's a different caveat, a different asterisk that kind of belongs in a different conversation, and I've been teasing I'm going to make a video about that at some point, and I promise you guys that I will. It's going to be very interesting. It might be the closest to genuinely mad you'll ever hear me, because I'm just not an angry gamer. But anyway, that aside, so they want to focus on the gamepad. That's the point I was driving home. That's a good thing. That gamepad is the differentiator. The Wii U is a very powerful system. It's more powerful than the last gen, hence making it next gen for sure, just on a chipset standpoint. But of course, on the hierarchy of the systems, it's the third most powerful. The Xbox One is more powerful than the Wii U. PS4 is more powerful than the Xbox, purportedly. So, given the fact that the Wii U, while powerful, can't really, do a lot of the same kind of things visually as the other two systems, it does have the other factor that separates it from the competition. That's the gamepad. Play Pikmin 3, play The Wonderful 101, play Zombie U. Tell me that those games aren't better and different and wholly unique and great because the gamepad makes them that way. That is such an advantage that the system has. When talking, I am so going to tangent here, but I'm going to try to stay focused, guys, so bear with me. When talking about the concept of next generation, quote unquote, I think that conversation is broader than people treat it. And it's one of the reasons it kind of irks me and why gamers have been really getting on my nerves the last few years, man, and especially now. Because yes, better graphics is always the immediately exciting thing when you think about going from one generation to another. I am, excuse me. I am a 33-year-old gamer, 33-year-old man. So I started gaming with the original Atari 2600, I was a child right before the NES came out in 85 in America. So I remember, learning what it meant to go from generation to generation when the NES was like my go-to. And then all of a sudden a Super Nintendo came out and a Genesis and the 16-bit. And it's like, wow, graphics can be better, 32-bit, 64-bit, all that good stuff. And so, of course, through that means that I really learned what it meant to have a jump in power from generation to generation. NES, Super NES, PlayStation 64, PS2, GameCube, all those jumps. It was always exciting because, yes, the graphics were going to be better, and that was exciting. However, especially nowadays when the leaps in graphics are getting smaller and smaller, and B, I think the way games look matters less and less to how good they can be. I think that it is, like I said, a broader discussion than just the graphics. So when I think about the Wii U and how that's next gen, to me, next generation can also mean control. It can also mean immersion. So I think that there's the next generation in graphics, the next generation in artificial intelligence, AI, and the next generation in control. Those are all quantifiably legitimate ways that gaming can improve and increase and become a new generation of available abilities. So I kind of think it's unfair when a lot of people talk about next gen. And I know, when people say the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are next gen, but the Wii U isn't next gen, they're only thinking graphics. And what a narrow-minded, boneheaded way to look at gaming. Wake the fuck up, guys, because yes, that stuff is true. And yes, it does matter. And yes, it absolutely does make things and games next gen, but it's not the only thing. The next generation in control, to me, especially with this next generation of the Wii U, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, it is a much larger conversation than just graphics. And the next generation in control that the Wii U offers that its competition, the other two systems do not, is a huge factor. It is the differentiating factor to me. And at the end of the day, I'm happy to have 3 more powerful systems than before. And I'm excited for more better graphics. I really am. That's going to be awesome. But I think that's part of the reason that Nintendo's strategy always works for me and speaks to me personally, and why I know that the Wii U is going to probably be my go-to system, because PS4 and Xbox One, they're going to be great. I can't wait to have them. They're going to be a lot of fun for the regular old kind of games we've been playing this whole time, only looking a little bit better. It's going to rock for that stuff. But Nintendo gives me still better graphics, maybe not as good, but slightly better graphics, but it's given me something totally different, something totally unique and special that is what that controller can do. Now, again, another caveat, it has to be done right. You can't do what Call of Duty Ghosts did, where they really didn't take advantage of that controller. You can't play that game and say that this game isn't good because the gamepad doesn't matter. Well, that's not fair, because honestly, as much as I do love Call of Duty Ghosts as a Call of Duty game, and I like Infinity Ward even after the drama, Infinity Ward didn't do their due diligence. They didn't do their job with the next-gen Wii U version of Ghosts and make sure that gamepad was making a difference, and they did cool things with it. So, that's kind of an example of where that rests. But, ultimately, I tangented. I'm going to bring it back and finish this topic. Point I'm trying to make is they're going to focus on the gamepad going forward. As far as how they're going to market it, sell it to people, let people understand, they want to get rid of the whole concept where some people somehow still don't understand that the Wii U is a next generation Nintendo machine. They might think it's still something related to the Wii last generation and an add-on or an accessory for that. I think that's That's too bad. And, it's definitely something that Nintendo needs to work to get out of people's minds, because it has created a huge disconnect from gamers and from regular people who aren't like you and me, who wouldn't really know the difference. And they don't understand that the Wii U is a brand new whole machine with tons of new capabilities that you need to go out and purchase if you want to continue playing great Wii branded stuff and Nintendo games and hardcore games. Like they need to get that across. Miyamoto touched on this topic a little bit too. He said a lot of the same things. What he brought up that I thought was really interesting is how what they've noticed is the huge jump in overall system power from the Wii to the Wii U has, made it a little bit more difficult for Nintendo to be prepared with their games right away, which is why we saw such a lull the first 9 months. They couldn't have Super Mario World out when they wanted and Donkey Kong Country and all that stuff. They couldn't get those games out when they, this is Nintendo stuff, not third-party stuff. They couldn't get that stuff ready because it took them longer to prepare their games and their franchises for the actual next gen. It was way more next gen. I mean, basically, when you look at what the Wii did, and then when you go to the Wii U, you basically are almost skipping 2 generations, to be fair. You could certainly say or view it that way. So such a huge leap from the previous gen with the Wii to the next gen with the Wii U that Miyamoto said that's kind of what we're into. But he was very quick to say, we're not making excuses. This is just the way of it. We're prepared. We're ready. We feel good now. We're going to move forward, doing what we need to do with the Wii U. So that's the kind of whole thing about, ultimately they're going to focus on the gamepad. They're going to get it right in people's minds, and they're not abandoning the Wii U. They're going to still focus on it and move forward, making sure that thing kicks ass. And honestly, I just couldn't have been more thrilled with that. Alrighty, this video is already in dangerous territory of getting really, really long, so I'm just going to kind of touch on one more topic and sort of finish out with one last idea. Another thing that was addressed today and kind of been rumored for a while is that Nintendo is going to start using the mobile app market and the smartphone market to basically advertise their games, to incorporate them in some way. I think a unified Nintendo network is part of the thing they're doing too, which they've already put the first steps in place by unifying it between the 3DS and the Wii U, which, by the way, is awesome. I loved that so far. So they're going to start incorporating other smartphone technology and advantages into their strategy and hopefully use that to drive things forward. So far, what does this mean? It seems as if right now it doesn't mean that full Nintendo games are going to be made available on those platforms. Some people may or may not be disappointed by this. I don't know that I would super be angry if they did that, but honestly, I don't think that they should. So I'm glad to hear that they're not doing that. I do think that they've left it open for a potential down the road. So I don't think that they've shut the door on that idea. That's what it seems to me. But they basically have said that they're not doing that right now. But they're looking at, like I said, they want to do apps and marketing. I think maybe demos for stuff available on the 3DS and the Wii U, and some of the capabilities between them because, smartphones and tablets, they're using a touchscreen. Nintendo's complete hardware structure right now is based around a touchscreen between the Wii U and the 3DS. So there's a huge untapped market that they could be taking advantage of. This is something as a Nintendo fan that I actually support. I like this idea because it shows that they're finally willing to start thinking outside the box in really clever, creative ways. They're not going to be restricting everything to just their own little box, which even though I love that little box, it's kind of led to a lot of the mistakes they've made, which have gotten them into this position in the first place. So they're trying to do the things that they can to rectify the scenario. And I think that this is a good step, and it could potentially be a huge step and even a game changer, maybe even just for their own personal business. If they have things where you can download something that, similar to what the NES Remix is for the Wii U, where you get these little touches and tastes of what's available on the Virtual Console for one or both of the systems, or even a game coming up. Why not just game demos of stuff that uses a touchscreen to make available on those platforms, especially if it's for free. I mean, I guess they might charge a buck or two for it. I mean, that's the money business. So that really could happen, but I still think it would be a great idea. How they would use the unified network and, the Miiverse stuff on the smartphones, I don't know how they could and would do it, but I do think that it screams with potential. There's a lot of cool things that they probably could do with it. So that's a really exciting concept. So, ultimately what I'm getting at there is it's really neat to know that they're looking at that because that could potentially, save a lot of their business and make them a lot of money and make them more aware in the general mind space of the public. That's the other thing is it's that perfect kind of marketing that everyone has on them at all times. That's marketing in everyone's pocket. You reach them because it's in their pocket. You're going to get to everybody. They already know the Nintendo name, so you start making it available in those spaces, and it's really probably going to do really good things for you. So that's a good choice there, Nintendo. I support that one. The other thing is, something else I also support, surprisingly, is that Iwata mentioned he wanted to leave their properties and characters and franchises open to licensing. So this is quite interesting. This is a whole new beast for Nintendo and something I never really thought of previously. This means things, he worded it very specifically. I'll try to pull it up, but this means like, a Legend of Zelda cereal or a Super Mario Brothers television show like there used to be. Different kinds of, toys and figure related merchandising, movie properties, things like that. That's something really exciting that opens up, This could also end up permeating into the mobile space as well. But overall, it's not necessarily reflecting on that. It just means all things licensing. I'm trying to... Bear with me here. He said, okay, so here's a quote he said about this. We will be flexible about forming licensing relationships in areas we did not license in the past, such as digital fields. And that's a great way to put this. And something else he mentions, and I agree with as well, is provided we are not in direct competition and we can form win-win relationships. So that whole quote sums up that concept. That's great. I totally agree. Let other people take hold of your properties and your franchises and your characters in ways that you're comfortable with. That products for those of us that love it and want it, as well as make you a lot of money and just create more awareness for what it is that you guys do. And yes, very well said at the end, provided we're not in direct competition. He doesn't want to make something that's going to mean that that they would be working against their own material. They need to form a win-win relationship. Everyone wants that. So they're not going to struggle with that, and it's only going to become a benefit. Whether they're working with Nike or Hasbro or McDonald's or, at Universal Studios, I don't know, whatever it could be. I mean, they all want to have a win-win relationship, and that's how it's going to play out. I think it's going to be a really, really great thing. My last thing I'm going to touch on here before I end this video is I saw a really cool rumor on a Facebook post about this that kind of was first made me aware of this news a few hours ago. Is apparently a video game analyst, unnamed, not somebody I know, and this is just a rumor. But apparently somebody had suggested when it came out this news about opening themselves up to licensing rights. Somebody mentioned potentially teaming up with Disney. Now that is an interesting prospect. And even though as a super gigantic, humongous Star Wars fan, I've been very vocal about how I don't like Disney meddling with Star Wars, I do like the idea of Disney and Nintendo possibly doing stuff because I think they could really work together perfectly. In the same way that, Disney did great things for Marvel. I think that, and that's because Marvel's properties and characters are fantastic. Same with Nintendo. Oh my gosh, if we could get something... maybe we can finally get that Zelda movie we've wanted for 2 goddamn decades. I mean, come on, Nintendo. This is one thing where I think you were kind of being stupid. Let a really great Nintendo movie be made, preferably not CG. But if you did, I'm sure it would still be great. I would like to see something like, Lord of the Rings-esque kind of quality and epic grandeur and scope in like a Zelda trilogy film or something. Oh my God, there's so much potential there. And Nintendo, there's so much money to be made. I mean, that is just, you really could have hit the jackpot with this whole idea of opening yourself up to licensing. And I say that because we know that Nintendo is going to protect their properties and not let it turn to shit. They're not going to let it oversaturate everything and ruin their franchises. This is one area where their pride is going to keep this whole concept intact. So that's why I support it. And if they do the right things, and if a company like Disney or Pixar or anybody does the right things with their properties in like film, man, we could be looking at a really exciting future. Of course you think the Zelda franchise and the Metroid franchise, Metroid being my favorite all time, those two franchises really lend themselves to a lot of different stories and possibilities and new characters to introduce. Stuff like Mario and Star Fox is kind of a little bit more limiting, although there are things you can do with it. But the other two, the Zelda and Metroid and stuff like that, you can do amazing things there. So that's kind of the fine little piece of news. That's a fun little nugget to think about and ruminate on, the idea of Disney working with Nintendo or anybody, and it's... Whether or not it happens, of course, remains to be seen. This is all new information as of today, and nothing is concrete or set in stone. And obviously, throughout the year, and maybe even at E3 in a couple months, we'll get even more information that solidifies what's going on. But at the end of the day, there's a few other things that happen. I'm not going to touch on it all. I'm going to wrap this up here. But at the end of the day, this is them addressing the issues that have been happening. They came right out and said it full force. The last thing that Iwata said is he said, through all of this, he said like my faith or my resolve is not shaken. People asking him about the concept of resigning, and a lot of people say maybe Iwata needs to go away. I've shared my feelings on that previously. I like Iwata ultimately, so whatever he decides to do, I guess is fine. The fact that he says his faith isn't shaken, that's a good sign. It's good to hear somebody in his position have conviction. You know, you need to believe in your product. If he and the company believes in it, slowly but surely, we the consumer will as well. So I'm really glad to hear you say that, Iwata. Good on you. I hope that you can get over your recent fuck ups. Everything you've done prior has been amazing. You've made so much money for Nintendo and helped make them the company they are today. So if you can keep that going forth, then good. I'm gonna have some cautious optimism and faith in you right now, because I think that the tides are turning and everything's gonna work out okay. So ultimately, that's the feeling. That's what happened today. I felt great about it. What do you think? Do you think that these are smart moves? Do you support Nintendo still? Are you mad at them? Do you just not like them? Do you not really care? I mean, whatever it is you think, I definitely want to know and hear about it, because the more information you share, the better. And, hooray for Nintendo. I think good things are coming up. Alrighty, guys. Well, that's it for today. So as always, if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to the channel Rule of Two Review. We're on Twitter at Rule of Two Review. There's a link to the Facebook page below. Share the video if you like it. Share your comments and thoughts below, like I said, if you like it. Also, please don't forget, check out Mr. Chad. I'm going to link that stuff below. He's playing through the Banner Saga. Pretty soon, he's going to be going through Dark Souls. So I think you're going to be seeing some of that show up soon as well. And we'll get him on a news episode and kind of reintroduce Chad to the world and all of his awesome hilarity. So thanks, as always, for tuning in, guys. It means so much to me and us. And I'll catch you next time.